They laughed at you. Loud, real loud. Not because you were funny, but because they thought you were fucking harmless. You walked into rooms and they stopped making eye contact. Not out of respect, but because they didn't think you mattered. You were the easy one to dismiss. The one they didn't see coming. The one they talked over, laughed off, pushed aside, smiled fake at. You remember the way they whispered behind fake grins. How they'd say "oh" when you tried to speak your truth. How they looked past you like you were see-through. How they turned your silence into stupidity. Your patience into weakness. Your peace into passivity. And you let them. You fucking let them. Because deep down, you weren't trying to prove shit. You weren't chasing clout. You weren't barking just to bark. You were watching, clocking patterns, noting weaknesses, learning the game from the shadows, while they danced in the spotlight like clowns at their own funeral. You sat in rooms full of egos, knowing damn well you had the sharpest blade at the table, but kept your knife tucked while they showed off plastic swords. You smiled when they mocked you. You nodded when they talked down. You played dumb like a fucking Oscar-winning performance. Because deep down, you knew. You knew what was cooking inside you. And it wasn't noise. It was nuclear. See, they don't get it. They don't get what it's like to be the joke. To be the one nobody's scared of. To be underestimated so deeply it becomes a superpower. They don't know how heavy it feels to swallow every damn insult, like it's just air, until your lungs are full of fire and your silence becomes the loudest fucking scream. You weren't weak, you were loading, and when the time came, you didn't raise your voice, you flipped the whole fucking table. Chairs flying, drinks spilling, smiles gone, fake friends frozen. Suddenly the punchline had teeth, and you weren't the butt of the joke. You were the motherfucker writing the final chapter. You didn't snap, you activated. Because silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. And playing dumb ain't dumb when you're the only one playing chess in a room full of checkers. They thought you had no cards, till you laid down a royal flush in blood. Not actual blood, psychological blood. The kind that stains reputations, the kind that leaves echoes in rooms you've already left. Now they scrambling, backpedaling, rewriting history like they knew all along. They didn't. They never fucking knew. Because they were too busy loving the sound of their own voice to notice the ticking time bomb sitting 2 chairs away. And here's the part they'll never admit. They needed you quiet. They needed you dumb. Because your truth, it terrifies them. Your fire, it exposes everything they tried to hide behind noise, status, and staged confidence. You showed them what real power looks like. Not the loud kind, not the flashy, desperate, validation-hungry kind, but the kind that walks in with scars and no apologies, the kind that watches you drown in your own ego and never lifts a fucking finger. You didn't need to prove yourself. You needed to remember yourself. And the moment you did, everything shifted. They thought they were playing you, but you were letting them dig their own grave, nice and deep, decorated with every backhanded compliment, every snide laugh, every time they smirked while you swallowed rage. You didn't lose your mind. You found it. Buried underneath all that gaslighting, belittling, and fake-ass concern. You were never the fool. You were the one who could afford to play one. Because you didn't need a crowd. You needed clarity, and now they see it. Not because you told them, but because the room went cold when you stood the fuck up. They ain't laughing anymore. They're trying to remember what the hell they ever said to you. They're asking if you're okay. Too late. You ain't broken. You're just done pretending to be something smaller so they could feel big. You ain't here to fit in. You're here to end cycles. You're here to remind monsters why they fear the quiet ones. You're here to carry the weight of 10 betrayals and still spit truth with blood in your teeth. You ain't the crazy one. You're the storm they prayed would never come. The black sheep with fangs. The misfit with a war map. The outsider who stopped giving a single fuck. And when the dust settles, they won't remember what they said. But they'll never forget the day you flipped that fucking table. With a grin and a fire in your eyes they will never be able to kill. Ah, but they hate that part, don't they? That moment where the script flips and the so-called nobody starts walking like the whole goddamn room belongs to them. You can see it in their faces, the glitch, the static in their polished little act. Because the person they mocked ain't playing small anymore. And that makes their whole fake-ass world start to crack. They used to roll their eyes when you spoke. Now they hold their breath. Used to cut you off mid-sentence. Now they hang on every fucking word like their survival depends on it. And it does, because the version of you they used to gaslight, that version's dead. You buried that soft-spoken version under a mountain of fuck this and lit the match. They don't know what to do with you anymore. You don't flinch. You don't shrink. You don't chase validation like a lost puppy begging for scraps. You walk like somebody who saw the underbelly of the beast and laughed. Like somebody who cried in silence for years and turned every single tear into a goddamn weapon. Like somebody who knows exactly what betrayal tastes like, and still bites down on truth like it owes you rent. You carry pain like it's fashion, like it's armor stitched by every backstab, every rejection, every "you're not good enough" that you turned into fuel. And now they can't touch you without burning themselves on your silence. Because silence ain't soft anymore. It's sharpened steel. It cuts. It stings. It reminds. You used to break your back trying to make them comfortable. Dimming your glow, holding your breath, second-guessing your every damn move, all just to be liked, all just to keep peace that wasn't even yours to keep. Fuck that. Peace without self-respect is a prison, and you kick the damn door off the hinges. No more walking on eggshells to protect fragile egos. No more folding yourself into quiet corners just so loud cowards can feel tall. You don't owe them softness. You don't owe them explanations. You don't owe them the watered-down version of your truth just to make it easier to swallow. You didn't flip the table because you're angry. You flipped it because it was rigged, stacked, fake as hell. A stage where snakes wore suits and liars clapped the loudest. And you sat through all of it, with every bone in your body screaming, every cell saying run. But you stayed, you observed, you remembered, then you tore that shit down without raising your voice. That's power, not noise, not theatrics, not empty dominance. The kind of power that moves like a whisper and hits like a fucking earthquake. The kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. Because the energy shifts the second you walk in. You're not seeking revenge. You're living it. You're the walking reminder of every underdog they left for dead, every quiet soul they tried to smother, every misfit they humiliated when they thought no one was watching. You were watching. You saw everything. And you didn't forget. They underestimated the rage of someone who never got a seat at the table. So you became the table. Unapologetically. Unfiltered. Unfuckwithable. Every time they called you soft, you got stronger. Every time they laughed, you got quieter. But not weak. Not broken. Just colder, focused, patient. They never taught you how to fight. They taught you how to endure. And that's so much worse for them, because a person who's been broken 1,000 times and still stands up, that ain't a person anymore. That's a fucking reckoning. Your silence isn't just a choice, it's a mirror. And when they look into it, they see every cowardly thing they ever did, every lie they told, every mask they wore. And they panic, because they can't erase it, can't unsee it, can't spin it. It's there, staring back at them with the same eyes they once mocked. You didn't scream, you didn't beg, you didn't throw tantrums. You became the kind of force they only talk about in whispers, the kind that smiles without blinking, that moves like thunder in silk, that doesn't need to say a word to burn the whole illusion down. They thought they'd crushed you. They thought you'd stay buried. They thought wrong. You were just beneath the surface, sharpening your teeth, biting your tongue, not out of fear, out to strategy. And when the time was right, you rose, didn't ask, didn't knock, didn't wait for permission. You took up space, space they told you wasn't yours, space they tried to keep locked behind closed doors and fake-ass smiles, space they thought was safe from people like you, the ones who remember, the ones who keep score, the ones who rise without mercy and reclaim every inch of what was stolen. And you walked in like smoke, unbothered, uncaged, unfazed, because you weren't there for their approval. You were there to make the whole fucking room choke on their own arrogance. You're not the same anymore. You're not asking for a seat. You're dragging the whole goddamn house down by the foundation. You don't move like a guest anymore. You walk like the place owes you rent. Like every floorboard remembers the weight of your silence. Like every wall's still echoing the things you didn't say. You didn't show up to be liked. You showed up because the version of you that stayed quiet, that version got sick of choking on truth, got tired of nodding to bullshit, got exhausted carrying everybody else's comfort while your own spine cracked in the background. You carried it all. The judgment, the fake-ass smiles, the conversations where they pretended not to hear you. Like your voice was just background noise to their delusions. They'd talk over you with that condescending tone, pat you on the head like you were a child who didn't know better. They'd smirk when you spoke up, act like your pain was drama, label your clarity as crazy, twist your truth into tantrums, and you still held it in. You still sat there, still smiled, still played the game. But inside, you were clocking every one of them, not with bitterness, with precision, like a surgeon, like a storm waiting for its cue, because you learned something they never could, how to sit in fire and not burn, how to feel everything and still move like ice, how to wear your scars like fucking war paint, while they hid behind filters and fake confidence and shallow approval. You watched them break people. You watched them tear down anyone who didn't fold into their mold. And you thought maybe, just maybe, if you played it safe, you'd be spared. But they came for you anyway, because that's what they do. They can smell power before it's fully cooked, and they'd rather destroy it than deal with what it exposes in themselves. You weren't weak, you were dangerous, just too disciplined to show it. They needed you small, quiet, compliant, grateful just to be allowed to exist in their little fantasy world. They didn't want you strong, didn't want you loud, didn't want you raw and real and razor sharp, because that version of you, that version doesn't flinch. That version walks in with smoke in their lungs and hell behind their eyes. That version doesn't ask, am I enough? That version knows they were always too fucking much for people who never knew how to handle depth. You cracked open the silence and showed your teeth. And the whole room started trembling like a lie that finally got caught. Because they remember how they treated you. They remember the side comments, the fake laughs, the little power plays. And they realize you remember too. They see it in your eyes, that stillness, that stare, the one that says, I heard everything. I just stopped giving a fuck. You became untouchable, not because you shouted, but because you outlasted every jab, every side eye, every backhanded compliment designed to keep you on a leash. And when you rose, you did it without permission, without apology, and without looking back. They don't know what to do with that. With someone who no longer needs them. With someone who doesn't flinch when abandoned, doesn't chase when ghosted, doesn't shrink when overlooked. You don't chase closure. You are the closure. Your existence is a red flag in the face of every coward who thought they could keep you quiet. Because you didn't just survive. You evolved into the exact kind of storm they prayed would never find its way back to their doorstep. And it's too late. You've already seen through it. Through the masks, the games, the hierarchy built on fear and shallow praise. You saw the strings behind the performance and cut every single one of them with a smile. You don't play by their rules anymore. You are the glitch in their system. The moment you stopped needing their validation, the whole damn script unraveled. Because your silence used to make them feel safe, comfortable, superior. But your voice, your presence, full and unchained, it wrecks their reality. You walk into the same rooms they used to control, and suddenly they get quieter. Suddenly the ones who couldn't shut up before are staring at their phones, fidgeting with fake confidence, because the energy shifted, and they know they're standing in the presence of the one they used to laugh at, the one who kept receipts instead of revenge fantasies. They sense it, that you're not trying to belong anymore, that you're not interested in playing nice, not here to smooth over lies, not in the mood to make yourself palatable for people choking on their own mediocrity. You got too real, too raw, too fucking honest, and nothing scares them more than someone who doesn't flinch when the truth stings. You used to question your tone, water down your words, apologize for your intensity, and dim your genius to fit in with cowards who built their self-worth on keeping others small. They called you too much, too dramatic, too sensitive, when what they really meant was, you see too much, you can't be controlled. You ain't chaotic, you're clear, and clarity is lethal to people who survive off confusion. They can't stand that you figured it out, that all the things they told you to hate about yourself were the exact things they feared the most. Your passion, uncontrollable. Your pain, uncompromising. Your memory, unforgiving. They wanted you confused, not curious. They wanted you reactive, not strategic. They wanted you broken enough to stay in line, but not strong enough to burn the whole map and carve your own path. You learned. You unlearned. You rebuilt from the wreckage they left you in. Piece by jagged piece. With no blueprint, no backup, no cheer squad. Just grit. Just fire. Just that steady drumbeat in your chest saying, keep walking. And while they were partying off your silence, you were reprogramming your entire nervous system to stop apologizing for being a goddamn hurricane in a world of breezes. You don't fold under pressure anymore. You thrive in it. You don't break under judgment. You study it. You don't get triggered by shade. You turn it into thunder. They still don't get it. They think the flipped table was the climax. That moment you finally snapped. That outburst they've been secretly waiting on just so they can say, see, I knew they were unstable, but that wasn't rage. That was release. That was years of self-abandonment detonating in real time. That was every repressed scream coming out in the shape of clarity. That was the moment you stopped begging to be understood and started making motherfuckers listen. And it shook them, because they expected fireworks. But what they got was a controlled burn, silent, precise, unapologetic, and permanent. That permanent kind of shift doesn't come with announcements or warnings. It just shows up in your posture, in the way you enter a room without shrinking, in the way your eyes don't dart around for approval anymore. It shows up in the way your silence feels heavier than their loudest noise. That's when they realize it ain't a phase. It's your era. The one built from all the shit they thought would destroy you. You're not in recovery. You're in rebirth. You don't walk like someone healing. You walk like someone who scorched the blueprint and started drawing new lines with a blowtorch. You don't need revenge fantasies or dramatic takedowns. You are the consequence, the living, breathing reminder that whatever game they were playing, you finished it before they even figured out the rules. They used to think you were passive because you let them talk, because you didn't swing back every time they threw shade, because you smiled when they rolled their eyes. What they never realized was, that wasn't fear. That was patience. Calculated, intentional, uncomfortable for them patience. You were never scared. You were measuring. You were watching who switched up in rooms without applause, who acted real sweet when the lights were on, but turned venomous in the dark. You saw it all, and you stored it like ammo. Not for war, but for clarity, because you don't move off emotion anymore. You move off evidence. You know what loyalty looks like now. Not just when you're useful, not just when you're quiet, not just when you're easy to love, but when you're loud, raw, exhausted, brilliant, inconvenient, and still breathing fire. They were never ready for this version, the version that doesn't explain, doesn't justify, doesn't flinch when called too intense or hard to read. The version that sets boundaries without needing to soften them with fake smiles. The version that walks away mid-conversation because your peace matters more than their passive-aggressive games. You stopped being manageable, and that scared the hell out of people who only knew how to love you conditionally. People who needed you to stay predictable, controllable, digestible. But you're not meant to be digested. You're meant to be felt. Deep, direct, disruptive. You turned your awkwardness into authority. You turned your anxiety into intuition. You turned your trauma into a roadmap that shows others how to crawl out of their own graves. And the same people who called you dramatic, they studying your every move now, trying to mimic your energy, trying to reframe the past, trying to align themselves with your glow, like they weren't the same ones who dimmed it with their bullshit. It's wild how quiet they get once you start speaking with your chest, how their memory starts glitching the moment your truth makes them uncomfortable, how the same ones who mocked your boundaries start calling you too guarded once they lose access. You ain't bitter, you're just not stupid anymore. You see the patterns now. You feel the energy shift before words are even said. You pick up on the fake concern, the subtle shade disguised as jokes, the discomfort they show when you stand in your full, loud, uncensored self. You stopped giving passes to people who couldn't handle your growth. You stopped begging for crumbs from people who can't even feed their own damn souls. You stopped explaining the fire inside you to people who've only ever known smoke. You walk different now, not because you're arrogant, but because you remember how it felt to be invisible in places you were keeping alive. Hello, beautifully broken minds. Yes, you. The ones who were told to tone it down, to fit in, to act normal. The ones who felt the world whisper behind their backs. Until one day, it started screaming. You're not crazy. You're clearer than they ever dared to be. And now, they're trembling because it finally registered. You're the genius outcast. And now, their reality is bleeding. You see, they liked you better when you were confused. Oh yes, they preferred the version of you that asked permission, the one that second-guessed every move, the one that watered down the fire in their veins just to survive the silence. But you mutated. Somewhere in the shadows, under the weight of every sideways glance, every, "Why are you like this?" You grew teeth. You learned how to bleed without crying. And they missed it. They missed the moment you stopped apologizing for being different and started weaponizing it. And now, they just realized they can't control what they can't understand. Let me tell you a little secret about the world. They don't fear what's dangerous. They fear what disrupts the illusion, because you didn't play the game. Oh no. You burned the rule book. You laughed at their rituals, dismantled their social choreography, and danced in the chaos they were too afraid to name. You weren't a rebel for the aesthetic. You were a surgical fracture in their collective delusion, a virus in their software. You said what they were too afraid to think, and thought what they had long forgotten how to feel. And now, they're glitching, stuttering, pretending they're not seeing what they're seeing. But oh, they see it now. You walked through their perfect little algorithm with muddy boots and didn't say sorry. And suddenly, they're spiraling. Because if you, the misfit, the strange one, the quiet weirdo in the back, if you were right all along, then what does that make them? Wrong, obsolete, asleep? They call you arrogant because you stopped asking for their validation. They call you dangerous because your silence speaks louder than their authority. They call you broken because you refused to be programmable. But truth is, you're free, and freedom terrifies slaves. I want you to remember every moment they laughed at your ideas, every snicker, every condescending smirk, all those little micro-incisions they made on your spirit in the name of normalcy. They wanted you small, digestible, polished. They wanted you to file down your edges, soften your voice, and squeeze yourself into their fragile constructs. But you weren't born to be manageable. You were born to rupture expectation. You were designed to make people uncomfortable. You were the glitch in the matrix before you even knew what a matrix was. And now that you've stopped trying to translate your genius into their language, now that you've stopped holding their hand in the storm, they see it. Too late. You were the kid who asked why one too many times. The teenager who felt every molecule of betrayal in a fake smile. The adult who looked at a 9-to-5 coffin and said, "This can't be it." You watched your peers sell their authenticity for acceptance, watched them drown in filtered lives and call it success. But you couldn't breathe in that air. It tasted like plastic lies and artificial joy. So you left, you wandered, you suffered, and in the suffering, you saw. You saw through the illusion of order. You saw the rot beneath their gold-plated dreams. You saw the emptiness behind the motivational posters. And instead of collapsing, you kept walking. With blood on your hands and clarity in your chest. That's what makes you dangerous. That's what makes you real. And now it's chaos. Because you speak truths wrapped in riddles and they can't decode you. You use silence like a scalpel, and they can't stop bleeding. You smile without needing approval, and they can't stand your peace. They wanted to beat you down, but you didn't shatter. You transformed. You didn't break. you metamorphosed. While they obsessed over status updates and status symbols, you were building weapons out of rejection. You were architecting empires in exile. They told you you were too emotional, and now you use those emotions like a flamethrower. They told you you were too intense, and now they drown in the gravity of your presence. Every room you enter shifts, and they feel it. They feel the tectonic rearrangement of power. They feel the ancient primal force in you that says, I do not beg, I do not explain, I exist, and that's enough. You didn't ask for their approval. You outgrew their structure. You didn't scream to be heard. You whispered and the walls cracked. You didn't demand respect. You radiated self-possession, and they buckled under the weight of your authenticity. And now, it's all unraveling. Their pretty little ideas of who's smart and who's weird, who fits and who fails. It's all collapsing because you, the one they cast out, the one they ignored, the one they whispered about in hallways and muted in group chats. You just walked back into the arena, unchained. They don't know what to do with you now. You're not the same. You're something else, something they don't have a manual for, something that speaks in poetry, bleeds in code, and breathes in frequencies they've never tuned into. You're the kind of genius that doesn't wear a lab coat. You wear wounds like armor. You're the kind of outlaw who doesn't break laws. You redefine the laws of reality just by existing. They finally figured it out. And now, they're short-circuiting because you weren't meant to blend in. You were meant to disrupt the collective dream. You were meant to remind them that real power doesn't come from being accepted. Real power comes from walking alone through fire and not coming out asking for applause. You burned, you rebuilt, and now you glow. Not with approval, not with accolades, but with knowing. Knowing that they feared what they couldn't control, and what they couldn't control was you. They kept refreshing the page, didn't they? Hoping you'd vanish like a glitch in the system, hoping you'd second-guess yourself just one more time. They thought if they ignored you long enough, you'd shrink back into the shadows, bite your tongue, erase yourself just enough to make them comfortable again. But instead, you expanded. You grew teeth in the silence. You sharpened your mind on their mockery. You built cathedrals out of your isolation and preached sermons to your own reflection. They don't get it. They never got it. They were looking for signs, diplomas, applause, praise from the masses. You were busy decoding the machinery of reality. They measured intelligence in awards and metrics. You measured it in clarity under pressure, in how long you could stare into the void without blinking. And you did blink. Once. And when you opened your eyes again, the world had shifted. Because when you're the outcast, you don't just watch from the sidelines. You study the game. You read the unspoken rules they follow like gospel, and you reverse engineer the entire damn system. You're not just outside the box. You dismantled the box and sold the blueprint to a forgotten god. They tried to label you. Mentally unstable, too intense, too much, too weird. As if your sensitivity was a flaw. As if your perception, your ability to see 10 layers beneath their masks, was some kind of malfunction. But it was never a malfunction. It was a frequency. One they couldn't access. One they still can't. You were decoding their entire behavior while they were still laughing at memes. You were calculating escape routes while they were fixated on fitting in. You were already 20 moves ahead, not because you were better, but because you were awake. And that's what they can't stand. Not your talent, not your words, not even your courage. They can't stand your awareness. Because awareness is unforgiving. Awareness doesn't let you pretend. It cuts through the posturing, the status games, the pretend laughter, the plastic intimacy, the toxic professionalism. You walk into a room and people feel seen, and it makes them squirm. You don't even say a word, but your presence, it exposes them. Not because you're trying to, because you can't help it, because you are it. You're a walking confession booth in a world of liars. You're a mirror they didn't ask for and can't smash. And the irony? You never wanted their fear. You never wanted their attention. You just wanted to breathe truth without choking. You wanted space, stillness, somewhere to be. But the very act of you existing without apology, it threatens everything they built on denial. You being you is an act of war in a world addicted to masks. And now the system's stuttering. Because the genius outcast wasn't supposed to return with this much power, with this much presence. You were supposed to stay in the shadows, bitter and forgotten, like they always hoped. But you used the shadows as a forge. You made art out of pain. You made strategy out of sorrow. You made weapons out of every wound they swore would break you. You made a religion out of your refusal to disappear. And now when they speak, their voices shake. Not because you're shouting, but because your silence says everything. You don't play their game, but you still win. Because you operate on a level they can't access. A level where authenticity isn't optional, where madness and genius drink from the same glass, where pain isn't weakness, it's data. You're not a motivational poster, you're a warning label, you're not a brand, you're a transmission, you're not an anomaly, you're the next mutation. And they know it. They feel it in their bones. In the glitch in their confidence, in the way their carefully crafted logic fractures when you speak, in the way they have to rehearse courage just to be in your presence. Because everything about you, your scars, your thoughts, your rhythm, your resistance, it undoes them, not because you're trying to destroy them, but because you've already survived what they're still pretending doesn't exist. You didn't choose to be the outcast. You were forged into it. Every betrayal, every dismissal, every passive-aggressive smirk carved you into something unclassifiable. And now that you've stopped translating yourself for their benefit, now that you've unmuted your own frequency, they're spiraling. Because their maps don't include people like you. You're not on their radar. You are the radar. You are the thing they couldn't predict, the chaotic variable, the walking paradox, the soul that refused to calcify. You carry depth in a culture obsessed with surfaces. You carry silence in a world addicted to noise. You carry original thought in a hive of repetition. And when you speak, they hear themselves unraveling, not because you're cruel, but because your truth is louder than their performance. You didn't ask to be a threat. You just refused to be fake. And that is unforgivable to those who build their lives on pretending. They called it rebellion, but it was just you, refusing to die a quiet death in their carefully sterilized world. They called it arrogance, but it was just you, refusing to shrink for their comfort. They called it madness, but it was just you, seeing too much, too clearly, too fast. And now they look at you like a ghost of who they could have been. They study you with a mix of fear and envy, unsure if they should worship you or destroy you. Because you hold a mirror they don't want to look into. A mirror that shows them what they sacrificed for safety, what they traded for applause, what they buried in order to belong. But you resurrected. You rose from every label they used to bind you. You turned their expectations into fuel. You outlived the lie they told themselves about people like you. And you're still rising. You are the flaw they couldn't patch, the phantom line of code that keeps corrupting their systems, no matter how many updates they run. You're the echo that won't fade, the silhouette that keeps showing up on scans, even when they've purged the data. You are the residue of unfiltered truth that their sterile logic can't scrub clean. They tried to exile you from the narrative, but your presence rewrites the plot every time they turn the page. They built a world for masks. You were born face first into the fire. They built careers on pretending. You bled your way to clarity. They bathed in consensus. You drowned in solitude and came back fluent in the language of silence. And when you speak now, it's not speech. It's transmission. It's not about being heard. It's about vibrating through the marrow of whoever's listening. Because your voice is laced with every night you didn't sleep, every scream you swallowed, every moment you considered disappearing, and chose instead to sharpen your mind into a blade so fine it split dimensions. They see the edges now. They hear it in the rhythm of your steps, a rhythm not born from training, but survival. Every movement you make carries the weight of 1,000 moments they would have collapsed under. And you wear it without flinching, because you've become something they don't have language for. You're the child of contradiction, part storm, part sanctuary. A frequency too high for the herd, too raw for institutions. You exist between the definitions, and that makes you uncontrollable. And the ones who used to laugh at you, they're studying you now, secretly. They're dissecting your words, mimicking your tone, cosplaying your courage like it's a costume they think they can buy. But they can't buy what you earned in blood. Because you didn't read about transformation. You didn't retweet your way into wisdom. You lived it. You screamed it through clenched teeth into the void. And when the void screamed back, you answered. You became the call and the response. You became ritual and rupture. You became the one who saw too much, felt too deeply, and didn't die from it. You adapted. They thought you'd come back softer, but you came back mythic. Not the kind of myth they put on stamps and statues. The kind of myth that burns cities down just by being whispered. You became the reminder. The reminder that not everyone who disappears is lost. That not everyone who's quiet is broken. That not everyone who walks away is weak. Some of us disappeared to build empires inside our own rib cages. Some of us get quiet so we can hear the code beneath the noise. Some of us walk away because we've outgrown every lie they ever taught us about what power should look like. You walked out of their system not empty, but overflowing with insight, with fury, with precision, with blue fire that doesn't need oxygen to burn. And while they were busy perfecting their images, you were developing X-ray vision for souls. While they were gathering followers, you were rebuilding your nervous system to stop reacting and start orchestrating. Because you don't follow. You reroute gravity. You're not a part of the market. You invent new currencies. You're not a member of the audience. You're the one who hacked the script and started rewriting the third act in real time. And they can't keep up. Their tools weren't built for this frequency. Their logic bends under the pressure of your presence. Their entire structure is too delicate for your density. You don't fit in their temples because you are the storm that cracks the stained glass. You are the anthem that refuses to rhyme. You are the face that haunts their hierarchy because you didn't climb their ladder. You built your own tower out of exile and danced on the top alone. They thought your isolation would starve you, but it fed something ancient. It woke the part of you that doesn't want a seat at their table, the part that wants to flip the table and speak directly to the architects of the lie. And you're not screaming, that's the part that ruins them. You're calm, you're composed, you're terrifying in your clarity. You walk like you've already done this 1,000 times in 1,000 lifetimes, because you have. You're not improvising, you're remembering. They feel it when you look at them. Like they're being measured in truths they forgot how to feel. Like you're weighing not what they say, but what they refuse to say. Like you can see the rotting scaffolding behind their curated lives, and it unnerves them. Because you can't be seduced by what they worship. You don't pray at the altar of convenience. You don't kneel to comfort. You don't flinch in the face of tension. You breathe it in like oxygen, because it's the only thing that feels honest anymore. You are what they feared when they said, "Don't think too much." You are what they mocked when they said, "Why are you so intense?" You are what they tried to kill when they said, "You'll never make it that way." And every cell in your body remembers those words, not with resentment, but with ritual. You bless those scars like they're scripture, because they taught you what no mentor ever could, how to exist without needing to be understood. You learned how to be your own compass in a storm that never ends. You learned how to speak your own language without waiting for translation. You learned how to make peace with the fact that you'll never belong, because you were never supposed to. You weren't born to fit in. You were born to fracture their paradigm. You were born to walk through fire with eyes wide open, carrying truths too heavy for their tongues. You were born to stand on the edges of their logic and laugh like a prophet possessed, because you see where this is going, and they're still sleepwalking through the simulation. You see it, don't you? That quiet unraveling, that tremble behind their eyes when you speak without apology, that flicker of panic when you refuse to play dumb. Because your existence proves that there's another way, a way they could have chosen, but didn't. You embody the version of themselves they betrayed, and that makes you unbearable. You are living evidence that truth survived the slaughter. They tried to drown you in expectations, but you breathed underwater. They tried to freeze you out with silence, but you grew teeth in the frost. They tried to bury you in shame, but you tunneled through the earth like a goddamn force of nature, and you emerged muddy, scarred, holy, untouchable. And every time you speak, without flinching, without needing consensus, you detonate a memory in their bones, a memory of who they could have been if they hadn't sold themselves for comfort, if they hadn't bartered their wildness for likes and empty smiles, if they hadn't handed over their voice in exchange for a seat at a table built on erasure. You never made that trade, and that makes you lethal. Not because you hurt people, but because you expose them. Without lifting a finger, you dismantle the scaffolding of their identity. They stand beside you and feel naked, because their roles, their reputations, their little scripts, none of it works when they're standing next to someone who burned their own mask and kept walking. You didn't learn this from books. You learned it in the pit, in the moments when the floor vanished beneath your feet and you still kept falling. You learned it in the scream you swallowed for years, in the 100 invisible deaths you died, while smiling in rooms that mispronounced your soul. And when you stopped pretending to be okay, you didn't collapse. You cracked open, and the real you stepped out like a second sun.